Hello, I'm here at Saatchi Saatchi with Richard Hytner, who is the Deputy Chairman of Saatchi Saatchi Worldwide, and he's also an adjunct professor at the London Business School, as well as a graduate of London Business School, of the Sloan program. Richard, thank you for joining this MOOC. I'd like to ask you about your role at Saatchi, but let's start with Saatchi Saatchi. How does Saatchi Saatchi approach branding? What's your differentiation compared to some of the other agencies?
We've a pretty clear point of view about branding. As technology's moved on, as people have got more power, both employees and consumers, we believe that people act on emotion. They reason with conclusions, they act on emotion. So our point of view about brands is that to really succeed in the age of now, as we call it, you have to move people with the heart. We have a point of view about brands called love marks, which are those brands, those services, those products in B2C or B2B that command loyalty beyond reason, that people have an irrational loyalty towards. You have a relationship steeped in some kind of emotional connection.
So brands at some level are a trademark. How does one develop an emotional relationship towards this thing called brand? How does that happen?
It happens if you think of the brands that you love and that other people love, the Apples, the Googles, the Disneys, in the B2B world. There are plenty of other examples. They're built on foundations of respect. So no respect, no love. So it's terribly important that these products and services deliver. They do what they say they're going to do. They outperform. So it's not without function or trust. But on top of that, they build an emotional connection through things like intimacy, a sense that these brands belong to you in some way, through playing to all the senses, all five senses, through developing some mystery, a sense of iconography, history, stories, things that in a human-to-human relationship drive a much deeper emotional relationship.
Now, you mentioned performance dimensions. Can you actually earn the love of your customers, at least over time, if you don't deliver on the performance?
No, I think that's the critical thing. And the thing I learned actually at London Business School and taking some of your classes, Nader, is that if you simply go out and promise some kind of lovely relationship, but you continually let people down, you only get so much forgiveness before they walk away. So unless you can actually deliver on the kind of relationship that you are laying out as an expectation, you're going to be in real trouble.
Now, you mentioned B2B examples. What would be an example in the business-to-business space where maybe you've taken a company that has had good performance, but you've added that emotional dimension to the mix, and if there's an example you could speak to, that'd be great.
Yeah, there's a pretty recent example where we work with PwC, one of the big four, specifically in their assurance division. And you might imagine that most auditors, when asked that dinner party conversation, what do you do for a living, there's a little bit of shoe shuffling. And actually, when you think about the emotional benefit of auditors as a bunch of professionals and what they deliver to the capital markets, the confidence they provide, they fulfill a very important role, but their perception of themselves is nothing like as positive as it could be. So working with these auditors and these assurance practitioners right across the world, we built a dream for their practice about building a movement of trust in business and beyond, which is a higher order why. It's a great aspiration for people doing the daily work of auditors, something to aspire to, something to feel good about, the idea of providing confidence to the fingertips of their clients. And that really did give them a sense of, and is continuing to give them a sense of, self-esteem and self-importance.
Now, you didn't launch an advertising campaign to say this to the world. How exactly was that built? And maybe you could give some examples of the processes or interventions that you used.
Yeah, the process has started with what we call exploring. It's kind of ethnographic research, which we applied inside the business, right across the firm, in their different regions, to understand what different generations of assurance practitioners felt. It's all about feeling. It's critical that you deal in the currency of feelings if you want to develop an emotional brand. Understanding what the regulators felt, understanding what some of their clients felt, developing insights for the business to act upon. So huge amounts of exploration, discovery, before alighting on some kind of idea, not that played out externally, but that could be played out internally. And they arrived at this idea of confidence at your fingertips, which the world has never seen, but which a lot of people around the 80,000 assurance practitioners in PwC are intimately familiar with.
When you returned from London Business School, as a matter of fact, the last 8 years, you engaged in a similar journey for Saatchi & Saatchi. Could you describe your role and what it took, in some sense, to transform the group itself to deliver on your promise to your customers?
Yeah, we're a purpose-driven company. Our executive chairman and chief executive for 17 years, the guy who asked me to initially run Europe, Middle East and Africa, and then 3 years later say, I need you to drive our purpose more assertively and inspirationally right across Saatchi & Saatchi. He's a great believer in purpose. We have a dream about world-changing creativity. We have a point of view about brands. Filling the world with love marks, these brands that command irrational loyalty. Now, he'd written a book about this, seminal piece of work, and he thought that by giving everybody a copy of the book, 5,000 Saatchi practitioners would then go forth and fill the world with love marks. After 3 years of operating as a CEO in Saatchi, I felt that our people needed more than that. And so when he decided to take me out of that and put me into a staff role to really drive this thing, I thought the joy was actually creating practices, processes, IP that would inspire our people to adopt the kind of inspirational idea that he'd written about. And so for 8 years, we've been working to process and practices and learning and development programs, signature experiences with our clients to actually deliver on the promise of love marks. And that's the work I've been doing with a pretty lean team. But hats off to Kevin Roberts, our executive chairman. He didn't just have the purpose, he put the resources, quite senior resources, against that internal journey.
And in many ways, it's a never-ending journey, I imagine. And you've been traveling the world for 8 years. Have you gone back to the same group?
Yeah, I feel a bit of a fraud because it's the kind of job you think ought to, at some point, be done. But of course, maybe it's a benefit, maybe it's not. But the industry I work in is quite a fickle industry. It's a young industry. The talent is constantly seeking new opportunities. Millennials are millennials. Thankfully, they are impatient for new opportunities. So there is a little bit of turnover, quite healthy turnover in our industry. That means I go back to Beijing or Shanghai, and I see different people 4 years later than I saw previously. But exciting is that the light bulb moment for me on this internal thing was involving our clients in this. So the signature experience, the learning and development experience we call the Love Marks Academy, we only really began to get sustainable change within Saatchi when we brought our clients in to say, this is how we work. We want you working on the same platform. We want you to know intimately the process we go through. And in bringing them in, we then cemented far stronger relationships between them and our local agencies.
And doing this across the world, your agencies in the different markets are obviously in a different position, competitively speaking. There are cultural challenges. Can you reflect on some of those challenges and how you address them?
Particularly in relation to love marks, big variations in local embrace of the concept. So Latin America, China, India, everybody fell in love with it immediately. It plays to the heart. No embarrassment about the love word, the use of love in business. They adored it. You go to their offices, there are hearts all over the place. It's beautiful. You go to a North America, or maybe closer to home to London Business School, there is a far greater kind of desire to interpret love marks in a way that's acceptable to the talent that works here. So if you walk the corridors of 80 Charlotte Street, the iconic headquarters of Saatchi & Saatchi, you probably hear more the phrase loyalty beyond reason and the commercial underpinning to love marks than the love marks word, because the Brits, as you know, are kind of squeamish about that word. But the fundamental idea has travelled everywhere.
And maybe we'll finish off on reflecting upon your journey at London Business School. You had a moment of reflection, if I recall, afterwards, based on what you learned. What was that moment of reflection, and coming back to the agency, what did you bring back that changed you and your role within the group?
I think, as you know, because you co-created it, the dream for London Business School to have a profound impact on the way the world does business. I felt that in the classrooms, I felt that in my interactions with the students. I felt a real global immersion that I'd never had before to that kind of level of intensity. And so the thing I brought back to Saatchi was, first of all, a greater confidence to operate in the C-suite. No question about that. Most of my work now is done with leadership teams, B2B, B2C, and the confidence to ask the questions, the naive questions, I learnt at London Business School. But the second thing is the sheer brilliance of working in a diverse setting. So in the creative industry, we often talk about bring a diverse team together, and we pay lip service to it. I came to Saatchi and I learned that if I had an issue on a particular client, I could bring in talent from New Zealand, from Mexico, from anywhere in the world I liked to fix a problem. And to have that kind of global immersion and access is a deep privilege.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you.